Beneath the endless sky, the ocean waits, holding secrets older than memory, deeper than time itself. The waves crash above, but far below, silence reigns, and silence is a keeper of sacred truth. Legends whisper of a throne carved not by hand, but by the will of the sea, resting in the abyss. It is said the throne does not grant power, but binds the soul to the vast rhythm of the waters. The abyss calls only once, and those who answer are forever changed, woven into tides eternal. This is the story of Poseidon, not as a conqueror, but as a guardian bound by oath and ocean. His journey begins not with thunder or fury, but with a vow carried in the hush of deep waters. Close your eyes and listen, for the sea speaks not with words, but with currents, echoes, and dreams. The throne awaits in shadowed depths, where light fades, yet destiny shines brighter than any sun. And so begins the tale of the abyss eternal throne, and the oath that would shape the world forever. The sea begins with a whisper, a low hum carried on waves that touch every shore, yet belong to none. This whisper is older than stone, older than stars, a song woven into the breath of the world itself. Travelers at night hear it in the rhythm of tides, though few understand the voice behind the sound. The deep does not speak often, but when it does, it carries weight heavier than mountains and skies. Beneath the calm surface lies a realm where time flows differently, where shadows keep ancient memory. In that realm, the abyss stretches endlessly, silent halls of water lit by strange and ghostly light. Legends call this the Chamber of Eternity, a place untouched by storms, unseen by mortal eyes. The whisper here is not mere sound, but a living presence, watching, waiting, always listening. Sailors once swore they heard voices in waves, soft words promising safety or warning of pride. They feared the deep, yet honored it. For the ocean was both grave and cradle, enemy and friend. Some claimed the whisper belonged to no spirit at all, but to the throne hidden far below. A throne not of gold nor marble, but of coral, pearl, and the breath of tides eternal. It pulsed with a rhythm like a heartbeat, a reminder that the sea itself was alive and aware. No hand forged it, no king claimed it, for it existed before crowns and after empires fall. Yet the whisper grew stronger, carried upward by currents, seeking one who could understand. Not to conquer, not to possess, but to listen, to honor, to promise in return. In time, the whisper reached Poseidon, a young god restless with storms raging in his soul. He heard it not in thunder, but in silence, a call that stirred something long buried within. It asked no questions, demanded no worship, but offered a bond deeper than the roots of earth. To follow it meant leaving the comfort of skies, diving into silence no light could pierce. The abyss did not promise ease nor glory, but a truth vast as the waters themselves. The throne waited in patience, as it always had, knowing only the oath could awaken its power. And the whisper continued, gentle yet firm, echoing through the stillness, seeking an answer. Those who listened claimed it sounded like waves, and yet like a voice shaped from eternity. It was not command nor plea, but something between, a vow asking to be fulfilled. Thus the sea prepared its stage, and the abyss drew its breath, for destiny was near. Poseidon was chosen, though he had not yet chosen in return, for the oath remained unspoken. But the deep knew, as it always did, that the time of silence was ending. And so the whisper became louder, not in sound, but in presence, stirring the heart of the god. The abyss awaited, the throne pulsed, and the story began with a whisper that never dies. In the stillness of the abyss, The whisper grew into something more, a pulse calling for a sacred vow. The sea did not ask for conquest, for the ocean cannot be owned, only guarded with reverence and care. Poseidon listened, his spirit restless, hearing promises hidden between tides and the silence of the deep. The call spoke of balance, of harmony, of being more than a ruler, but a keeper of endless waters. This was the birth of the oath, not forged by command, but born from the heart of the ocean itself. It was a vow older than language, a bond tying spirit to sea, strength to responsibility, eternity to choice. The young god felt the weight of it settle within him, heavy yet strangely comforting, like destiny fulfilled. It was not power that tempted him, but belonging, a union with something greater than all thrones above. The oath whispered of guardianship, of storms tamed with compassion, of calm granted to wandering sailors. It promised no glory, no crown of jewels, but a bond written in waves and tides eternal. Poseidon closed his eyes and listened, the words flowing not to his ears, but directly into his soul. He was offered a chance to become not master of the ocean, but its eternal voice and protector. This was no simple promise, for once spoken, the oath would bind him beyond time and beyond choice. The sea asked for faith, for patience, for love greater than pride, and trust stronger than fear. Poseidon's heart wrestled with the vow, torn between freedom and duty, storm and silence, self and sea. But the abyss waited without pressure, for the ocean knows eternity and rushes nothing to its end. He thought of mortals lost at sea, praying into the night, hoping for mercy where none was certain. He thought of ships guided by stars, yet still swallowed by waves, begging for a guardian unseen. The oath offered him a chance to be that unseen hand, to be hope where hope fades. It was not authority that called to him, but the promise of purpose greater than storms or pride. Poseidon's breath slowed, his spirit listening deeper, as if his heartbeat now followed the rhythm of tides. The whisper grew softer, not demanding but waiting, inviting him to choose with clarity, not fear. And in that moment, Poseidon felt himself sinking into unity, no longer separate from the waters. He knew that by accepting, he would become not merely a god, but a living oath unbroken. The birth of his vow was not loud, not grand, but quiet, like a seed planted in silence. It would grow, it would shape, it would bind him forever to the ocean's eternal truth. Thus the oath began, not yet spoken, but alive within him. A flame lit beneath endless wave. The sea had called, the god had heard, and destiny now waited for the words to be sealed. And so the birth of the oath became the turning tide, where choice and eternity touched as one. Far below the waves, where sunlight fades and silence reigns, the eternal throne of the abyss waited unseen. It was not crafted by hand, nor raised by gods, but shaped by the ocean's own will and timeless breath. Coral grew around its frame like bones of the sea, glowing faintly with the shimmer of bioluminescent life. Pearls large as moons were embedded in its seat, polished smooth by the endless touch of passing currents. The throne pulsed with an ancient rhythm, like a heartbeat echoing through every tide and hidden cavern. It was not a symbol of conquest, but of balance, a reminder that the ocean bows to no ruler. Only one chosen by vow could sit upon it, not to command, but to listen, to preserve, to guide. The abyss itself was the throne room, vast halls of shadow where silence spoke louder than any thunder. Creatures of the deep circled near, not as guards, but as witnesses, knowing the throne's purpose was sacred. Legends told that those unworthy would find only silence, the throne cold and unyielding, empty of power. But to the one who bore the oath, the throne would awaken, binding soul to sea, destiny to tide. Poseidon drifted closer, drawn by a force both gentle and unstoppable, like a current leading him home. He felt its presence before he saw it, an energy older than himself, alive with quiet strength. The closer he came, the more the waters trembled, as if recognizing the one who carried the vow. No words were spoken, yet he felt welcomed, not as a conqueror, but as one expected for ages. The throne gleamed faintly in the darkness, not with gold, but with the soft radiance of living ocean. Each coral branch seemed to reach outward, not in warning, but in invitation, offering a place to belong. Poseidon hesitated, for he knew the seat was not luxury but weight, not crown but responsibility eternal. He remembered the whisper, the promise, the oath waiting to be sealed with presence, not with words alone. The throne was alive, not furniture but a spirit of the sea, vast, ancient, and endlessly patient. He placed his hand upon its surface, and the ocean itself seemed to pause, listening to his choice. The coral felt warm, the pearls thrummed gently, as though the sea's heart beat beneath his fingers. It did not demand, it did not command. It only waited, asking silently if he would accept. Poseidon's breath slowed, his pulse matching the rhythm of the throne, his soul sinking into deep harmony. For the first time, he felt the abyss not as void, but as presence, endless yet strangely intimate. The eternal throne was not a seat of rule, but a covenant, a bridge between God and ocean. And as Poseidon stood before it, he understood that sitting there would make him more than a god. It would make him voice, memory, and keeper of the sea, bound forever by his chosen oath. The throne waited, the abyss breathed, and destiny balanced on the edge of Poseidon's silent decision. The ocean stirred as if it sensed the moment, the currents weaving together in patterns older than memory. Waves far above broke with sudden rhythm, carrying whispers of change across coasts and distant shores. The creatures of the sea felt it first, their movements shifting, drawn to an unseen harmony of tides. Whales sang deeper notes, long and haunting, their voices rising like hymns to honor what was unfolding. Schools of fish swirled in spirals, their silver bodies flashing light as though the sea itself was alive. Even the smallest creatures, hidden in coral and sand, moved in unison with the gathering of the deep. The oath within Poseidon resonated outward, carried by currents that touched every hidden corner of the abyss. It was as if the sea recognized him, not as intruder, but as chosen, a soul bound by promise. The throne pulsed again, sending waves of energy through the water, echoing like distant thunder without sound. Dolphins leapt near the surface, their movements playful yet precise, as though celebrating a sacred union. Storm clouds began to gather above, not in anger, but as witnesses to the shift below. The sea was awakening, aligning itself with the vow, preparing to honor the one who had listened. Poseidon felt it through every breath, his body no longer separate from the ocean, but part of it. The salt in the water seemed to flow through his veins, carrying strength, patience, and eternal memory. The throne, once still, now glowed softly, its coral branches shimmering with a living, radiant light. Currents intertwined like threads of a tapestry, weaving unity between deep abyss and open sea. The harmony spread outward, reaching distant coasts where mortals paused, sensing change though knowing not its cause. Fishermen stilled their nets, hearing strange music in the waves, unaware it was the song of the oath. Children near the shore laughed as tides moved differently, gentler, as if the sea cradled them kindly. The balance between sea and sky, between abyss and shore, had begun to shift into new accord. Poseidon closed his eyes, feeling the chorus of the ocean embrace him, vast yet tender as kinship. Every current whispered the same truth. The oath was not his alone, but shared by the sea itself. He was no longer a god above the waters, but a part of their eternal rhythm and breath. The gathering currents swirled like an endless dance, uniting depths, surface, and sky in sacred alignment. It was not a coronation, not a crowning, but a joining of voices across the expanse of time. The sea had found its keeper, and the keeper had found his purpose, sealed not in words, but in tides. And so the currents gathered, carrying the oath across oceans, echoing in waves that would never forget. The abyss listened, the surface rejoiced, and the eternal throne glowed brighter, alive with the promise fulfilled. The sea does not give its trust freely, and so trials rose from the depths to meet Poseidon's vow. They were not trials of war or conquest, but of patience, wisdom, and the stillness of understanding. The first came with a storm, its winds furious and wild, testing his heart more than his strength. Waves towered high, ships drifted in terror, and the sky above roared with thunder beyond measure. Poseidon felt the storm inside him, fierce and proud, but the oath whispered calm into his soul. He lifted his hand not to command, but to listen, and the storm slowly bent into silence. Sailors prayed in awe, believing mercy had found them, though they never knew who calmed the seas. The second trial lay deep, where currents fought endlessly, colliding like rivals, unwilling to yield to one another. Here Poseidon swam, feeling chaos twist around him, a war of waters without reason or resolution. He stretched his arms, letting the currents flow through him, guiding them into balance, not domination. The abyss quieted, and the waters settled, teaching him that true power is born of harmony. The third trial was silence itself, long and heavy, pressing against him like endless shadows of time. No voice called, no current stirred, only the weight of solitude stretching into eternity without end. Poseidon faced himself in that silence, learning patience, humility, and the strength of listening without demand. It was here he understood. The oath was not a chain, but a bond freely chosen and renewed. The fourth trial appeared as despair, carried in the cries of sailors lost, their voices echoing in waves. He felt their fear, their sorrow, and their longing for safe passage across the unkind waters. The throne whispered to him, reminding him that his role was not to erase fear, but to guide. He shaped currents that carried lost vessels gently, letting them find direction, offering hope in unseen ways. And so Poseidon grew, not through victory, but through patience, through quiet guidance, through acts unseen by mortals. The trials were not meant to break him, but to shape him, to root his vow in the deep. Every storm faced, every silence endured, every despair comforted, became threads in the fabric of his oath. Poseidon returned to the throne, his heart lighter yet stronger, knowing he had passed what was asked. The ocean did not cheer, nor roar, for the sea speaks differently, in currents and tides of approval. The coral glowed softly, the abyss exhaled, and the throne pulsed with warmth at his silent success. He had proven himself not by might, but by listening, not by ruling, but by serving the waters. The trials of the abyss ended not with triumphal cries, but with the stillness of peace fulfilled. Poseidon had been tested, not to conquer, but to become, and the sea had accepted his vow. The sea had tested Poseidon, yet beyond trials awaited lessons older than gods, hidden in the silent abyss. He swam deeper, guided not by sight, but by the pulse of the throne echoing within his chest. Darkness thickened around him, endless and heavy, as though he drifted through the very soul of the ocean. Then came light, faint at first, flickering like lanterns, born from creatures that glowed with living fire. Their movements painted constellations in water, weaving stories of the ocean that words could never capture. They circled him, not in fear, but in recognition, as though they had awaited this very moment. One by one, their lights pulsed, forming patterns, shaping visions older than the sky itself. He saw memories of the sea not as tales, but as living truths flowing before his eyes. The first vision showed creation, when waters first rose and embraced the newborn land in gentle strength. No gods walked then, only silence and tide, the eternal breath of the world beginning its song. The second vision revealed harmony, when mortals first touched waves and sang in gratitude for its gifts. They fished with care, they prayed with reverence, and the ocean answered with abundance and safety. But the vision shifted, darker now, showing greed, storms of desire that wounded the sea's balance. Mortals took without honor, forgetting the bond, and the ocean wept, its harmony shattered by silence. Poseidon felt sorrow in his chest, heavy as stone, though the vision was not his doing. The third vision turned toward him, showing his own path, moments of pride, anger, and lonely rule. He had commanded storms, demanded respect, and yet, in all his power, he too had forgotten. The sea was not his to rule, but to share, to guard, to love without possession. The glowing creatures drifted closer, their lights tender, as though forgiving, as though reminding him. Poseidon whispered into the abyss, not a command, but a vow renewed. To listen, to serve. At his words, the lights joined, swirling together, forming a single radiant figure of flowing water. The figure spoke without voice, carrying meaning through tide and current, soft yet vast as eternity. You are not master of the sea, but its keeper, its guide, its memory carried in time. The words sank into him, not as weight, but as freedom, a release from chains of pride. For the first time, he did not feel apart from the sea, but wholly one with its essence. The creatures scattered, their lights trailing like stars, leaving him with silence that now felt like home. He swam upward slowly, carrying new wisdom, carrying the ocean not around him, but within. When he returned to the throne, it shimmered brighter, not in dominance, but in recognition of truth. Poseidon sat, not as ruler, but as guardian, and the abyss bowed, currents weaving in reverence. The oath had deepened, transformed, no longer a promise alone, but a bond eternal with the sea. The abyss had revealed its secrets, yet Poseidon knew the journey was far from complete, only deepening. For the throne was not simply a seat of power, but a living bridge between sea and sky eternal. As he sat, currents carried whispers of distant shores, of mortals whose lives were touched by the tide. He saw villages by the sea, their lanterns flickering at night, children laughing as waves kissed their feet. He felt their trust, fragile and tender, though they never knew the depths that watched over them. The oath was no longer about him alone, but about a bond between worlds that rarely touched. And so the sea tested him once more, not with storms or silence, but with reflection of truth. A ripple spread across the throne, showing visions of futures both bright and shadowed. In one, mortals honored the sea, offering songs and prayers, their nets cast with care and gratitude. The ocean thrived, abundant and joyous, waves carrying laughter like music across every shore. But in another, greed thickened, ships scarring the waters, the harmony shattered by endless hunger. The sea darkened, its song lost, silence heavy with sorrow, as life dwindled in forgotten corners. Poseidon felt both futures weigh upon him, heavy yet clear, asking him where he would stand. He realized then that the oath was not passive, but living, demanding choice, vigilance, and presence. It was not enough to serve the sea. He must also guide those who touched its edge. His role stretched beyond abyss and storm into the hearts of mortals who depended on its grace. The throne pulsed, recognizing his understanding, its coral shimmering like dawn breaking beneath the waves. From the depths rose a choir of whales, their songs weaving threads of promise through the ocean. They sang not to him, but with him, a chorus of guardianship that echoed through eternity. For the sea's memory was vast, but memory alone could not protect. It required living vows renewed. Poseidon placed his hand upon the throne, speaking softly, his voice steady as the tide itself. I will not only guard the abyss, but walk with those who depend upon its endless gift. The currents answered, swirling upward, carrying his words across oceans, turning them into eternal echoes. Above, fishermen paused, feeling a calm settle, unaware it was the vow that now held them. Children by the shore laughed louder, the waves gentler, a subtle blessing carried in every tide. Even the stars above seemed to shimmer brighter, as though listening to the oath beneath the sea. Poseidon smiled, not with pride but with peace, knowing the bond now stretched further than before. The throne glowed with steady light, no longer testing but affirming his place as keeper and guide. It was not the end, but the beginning of a guardianship that would never fade with time. The abyss bowed in silence, the waves rejoiced, and the eternal throne held the weight of his promise. The sea is never still, and so Poseidon's oath carried him into deeper mysteries beyond the throne. Currents rose and fell like breath, carrying voices from places where the abyss touched hidden kingdoms unseen. He followed the pull, moving through canyons of coral that glowed like stars, guiding him ever forward. At last he reached a vast chamber, where the waters shimmered with hues unknown to mortal sight. There lay the circle of tides, ancient and unbroken, a meeting place for the keepers of the deep. Not rulers, not kings, but guardians chosen by currents, each carrying the ocean in their own way. They appeared not as mortals, but as forms shaped from tide, shell, and song of the abyss. One rose like flowing kelp, her voice soft as foam, speaking of balance and the rhythm of waves. Another moved like shadowed current, deep and calm, his words carrying patience older than stone. They gathered around Poseidon, not in judgment, but in welcome, recognizing the oath bound in him. You are not alone, they said, their voices weaving together, for the sea has many keepers and hands. Poseidon listened, humbled, for he had always seen himself as solitary, a god apart from all. Now he saw truth. The sea was too vast for one, and its guardianship was a shared bond. They spoke of their duties, guiding currents, shaping reefs, protecting creatures, healing wounds left by neglect. Each carried burdens unseen, yet none claimed mastery, only service, only devotion to the eternal flow. Poseidon's heart eased, knowing he did not bear the vow alone, but as part of something greater. The circle invited him to join, to lend his strength, his vow, to the harmony they wove. He bowed his head, not in subservience, but in respect, pledging his oath among theirs as one. The waters pulsed with approval, and the chamber glowed brighter, as though the sea itself rejoiced. Then a vision formed at the chamber's heart, showing distant shores and mortals at the water's edge. The circle sang, their voices merging with currents, carrying blessings across oceans to those who lived by tides. Fishermen felt the sea soften, their nets guided gently, their boats steadied on once restless waves. Mothers by the shore held their children close, feeling comfort as if the sea itself embraced them. Even sailors lost at sea found stars above clearing, as currents shifted to guide them safely home. Poseidon watched, his chest swelling, not with pride, but with the joy of shared guardianship fulfilled. The circle turned to him, their forms shimmering, voices weaving through the water like eternal song. Guardianship is not power kept, but power shared, a promise renewed by every tide and breath. Poseidon nodded, the truth settling deep, carrying warmth that matched the oath within his heart. For the throne was his place, yet beyond it lay a greater family bound by sea and vow. As the circle faded back into current, their voices lingered, a reminder that he was never alone. Poseidon swam back toward the throne, his soul lighter, knowing the sea's guardianship was shared in unity. The ocean is eternal, yet every eternity carries moments where choice defines the rhythm of the tides. Poseidon returned to the eternal throne, but its glow shifted, revealing new patterns woven in coral light. These were not visions of past or trial, but threads of futures still fragile, waiting to be shaped. He leaned closer, listening as the throne whispered through current, each wave carrying a story not yet lived. The first thread showed harmony, mortals and sea walking side by side, respect anchoring their every action. Boats moved with grace, nets cast with care, and the ocean gave its gifts without sorrow or loss. The second thread showed neglect, coasts scarred by greed, the waters dimmed, the song of whales silenced forever. Here the throne pulsed heavily, reminding Poseidon that oaths alone could not guard against mortal forgetting. The third thread glimmered faint, uncertain, a path unformed, where choice would decide the fate of balance. It was neither dark nor light, but waiting, fragile as foam resting on a restless tide. Poseidon's chest tightened, for he knew the oath demanded more than guardianship. It demanded stewardship, not just watching, but guiding, reminding mortals of their place within the ocean's living rhythm. He closed his eyes, listening not to visions, but to the sea itself, vast, patient, and eternal. The answer came softly, not as command, but as invitation. Share the song, let it be heard. Poseidon rose from the throne, placing his hand upon its coral branches glowing with living light. He spoke into the abyss, his voice carried by tides, reaching beyond depths into mortal dreams. Remember the sea, he said, for it remembers you, cradle of life, mirror of your care or neglect. The waters stirred, carrying his vow outward, turning words into currents that touched every corner of the world. Fishermen felt calm in their boats, pausing to whisper thanks, though they knew not who listened. Children by the shore heard waves like lullabies, songs of comfort threading through their sleep at night. Even distant travelers at sea felt direction return, as if unseen hands steadied their wandering course. The throne pulsed warmly, affirming his choice, the uncertain thread brightening into a living possibility. It was not fixed, not guaranteed, for futures are fluid as tides drawn by moonlight. But Poseidon had planted seeds within the world, carried on waves, whispered in the breath of tides. The circle of tides stirred far away, sensing his vow, their voices rising softly in distant harmony. Together, they wove a song that wrapped around the earth, unseen, but felt in every tide's embrace. Poseidon knew then that guardianship was never silent, but a story shared through whispers of the sea. The eternal throne glowed brighter, its light steady, carrying the weight of both promise and hope. The abyss bowed once more, not in fear, but in recognition of a vow carried across all waters. The sea stretched endless, a mirror of sky, where clouds drifted like sails across the horizon of eternity. Poseidon stood in silence, the throne behind him glowing softly, no longer a burden, but a beacon. He felt the weight of centuries, not as chains, but as tides that rose and fell with quiet rhythm. The oath he carried was not his alone, but shared with every wave that touched the shores of mortals. He thought of their laughter on beaches, the way children chased foam as if catching fragments of eternity. He thought of fishermen who prayed to the sea, their nets lowered with both fear and reverence combined. And he thought of sailors gazing at stars, trusting the ocean to hold them steady through restless nights. The sea was not his possession, nor his dominion. It was a bond, ancient, deep, unbroken by time. From the abyss came a final whisper, not warning, not command, but gratitude flowing with the current. The eternal throne no longer pulsed with uncertainty, its light now steady, woven with calm assurance. Poseidon placed his trident gently upon the seabed, not as weapon, but as staff of memory and guidance. He understood that power was not in storms unleashed, but in balance guarded with patience and humility. The circle of tides gathered once more, their voices rising, not solemn but joyous, like dawn breaking. Their song wrapped around him, a chorus of waters, honoring not rule but harmony that would endure. He joined their song, his voice deep as the abyss, weaving with theirs into a timeless hymn of tides. Far above, mortals felt it as a sudden stillness, a calm sea at twilight, waves breathing in peace. They could not name it, but their hearts knew the ocean was listening, alive, holding their lives gently. Fishermen lowered nets with care, children laughed louder, and sailors charted courses with newfound respect. The sea had become more than backdrop. It was companion, guardian, and mirror of every choice made. Poseidon turned once more to the throne, but it no longer bound him. It now walked with him. It followed not his object, but his promise, glowing faint within every tide, every whisper of current. He smiled, rare and quiet, for gods seldom smile, but he felt the ocean smile through him. The abyss stretched beyond, endless and unknown. Yet it no longer felt cold, but full of possibility. Poseidon stepped forward, not to command the waters, but to walk with them, equal to their song. His vow was sealed, not in stone or coral, but in every tide that kissed the earth's edge. And so the throne stood eternal, not as seat of power, but as beacon of the oath everlasting. The sea exhaled, the waves carried it outward, whispering across horizons. Balance is kept, the vow endures. The story did not end, for stories of the ocean never end. They circle as tides, eternal and whole. And with each wave that touched the shore, mortals unknowingly echoed Poseidon's vow, to remember always. The sea is endless, yet even endless stories find a moment of pause before flowing once again. Poseidon stood at the edge of the abyss, the throne behind him, the horizon ahead, both bound as one. His oath had been spoken, not in thunder, but in currents that touched hearts without need of command. The circle of tides drifted outward, their song woven into the fabric of every ripple across the world. The ocean no longer asked for proof of his vow, for it felt the truth in the calm of waters. The abyss did not roar, it rested, holding silence like a sacred gift passed between depths and sky. Poseidon looked upon mortals, distant yet near, their laughter echoing faint like gulls over salt-washed stones. He saw not weakness in them, but resilience, like reeds that bend with storms yet never break. The throne glowed faint, no longer radiant, but steady, its light woven into every tide across the earth. It was no longer a seat, but a living promise, reminding all that the ocean remembers. Always. Poseidon turned away, walking with the current, his trident steady, not to rule but to guide gently. He felt the weight of eternity, not as burden, but as gift, each moment part of the endless sea. Above, the sky mirrored his oath, clouds drifting slow, sun touching waves in quiet golden harmony. Children by the shore ran through foam, their laughter rising, though they never knew whose vow they echoed. Fishermen raised their nets with care, pausing in silence, a moment of gratitude whispered without name. Sailors charted their course by stars, trusting the sea, its song a compass guiding them toward safe harbors. The world did not change all at once, but in small breaths, each tide carrying fragments of remembrance. Poseidon smiled, rare and quiet, for he knew the ocean's greatest strength was not power, but memory. Every wave was a storyteller, every current a keeper of the oath whispered into eternity. The abyss bowed once more, its silence a blessing, its depths no longer shadow, but cradle of balance. The eternal throne would endure, not as relic, but as reminder. Guardianship is not power, but harmony. Poseidon's vow echoed across horizons, not bound by time, but flowing with tides, endless and eternal. And so the story rested, not ended. For oceans never end. They circle, return, and rise once again. If you listen by the shore, in the hush of twilight, you may hear his vow within the waves, a promise that balance remains, that the sea is alive, and that remembrance is the greatest oath of all.